Community Radio.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. 800-240-4587. That's 800-240-4587.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Well, good afternoon, Johnson County. We thank everybody for joining us for today's broadcast. Get everything set up here real quick for you. Once again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for this Thursday's broadcast. If you are a repeat viewer or listener, I want to thank you for your continued patronage to the station and to the show. If you're brand new, welcome. We appreciate all of the company we can get. This is just like Christianity, one heart, one soul, one mind at a time. We are changing this country and empowering and informing voters to make critical choices and logical votes for the future of this country. Today, We are fulfilling another one of our parts of the series, Behind the Scenes, where we host local politicians, local candidates, whether it be school board, city, or county or state office, to come on and explain themselves, discuss why they are running for the position, and what makes them the best fit. Many of you may have seen Greg Cooper's show where he had Dale Hanna on and several others. Um, Tim Good, I'm going to disclose, is a personal friend of mine. I consider him a mentor and a colleague. And it's a pleasure to have him on today to discuss. And I'm going to be asking nonpartisan questions because I feel like for the voters who haven't made up their mind, I should not be the reason that somebody makes a choice purely on my endorsement or purely on my belief about a person, because that is why our country is the way it is. We need to choose the best people for the job. We need to choose the best people for the office. And I want you to be able to make your own informed and educated votes and choices on who you want. One thing that I respect about Tim is he has promised change for Johnson County and parts of Somerville County as well, right?
Yeah, all of Somerville County, but yes, absolutely change.
But I'm going to first of all start off with thanking him for joining us on the show today. Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of your history in the county, where you grew up, what got you into the legal field.
Okay. The legal field. So my parents have always said from a young age I was destined to be a lawyer because I like to argue a lot. Right. I don't know if that influenced in me to decide to go into law. When I was in college, I was not a poli-sci major. My dad had a MBA, so I wanted to do business.
Yeah.
So I also thought if I'm going to go to law school, poli-sci is something you're going to get anyway. Political science, you're going to get in law school anyway.
Yeah.
So I focused on business, focused on econ, finance, and marketing was my focus. When I got done with college, it was kind of at this crossroads. I had been accepted to do a master's program for advanced statistical analysis, which is something I thought I would never be interested in, but it was pretty interesting to me at the time.
Yeah.
And I decided between doing that or I did want to kind of pursue this long-term kind of dream that was dormant sometimes, it wasn't dormant other times, of going to law school. Ultimately, what I was looking to do was I wanted a career path where I could use specialized skills and abilities, whether they were statistics or law or something, where I could work with somebody like a client and if they would have a need and I would be able to use that, help them get through, whether it's a purchase of something, trying to like statistical analysis, make the right decision about a product or a campaign or whatever it may be. I've ultimately landed on law and decided to go pursue law. I think mostly because I realize, and I think most people see this, when you need a lawyer, there's tons of lawyer jokes and they're well-deserved jokes in the legal field. But when you have a horrible situation, you have to get a lawyer. That's probably the most vulnerable time. And having a good lawyer, someone that knows what they're doing and can help you guide. So a lawyer is often called a attorney and counselor at law. The counselor part is actually a big part of law, is where you actually help advise your client, help them get through a situation. And so it was that desire to help other people that really ultimately led me to go to law school.
So tell us a little bit about the beginning of your life. Did you grow up in Johnson County, Somerville County? If not, what made you move here? What made you want to start public service in the county here?
Okay. So no, I was actually born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas, on the east side.
Okay.
Then I grew up there. My family moved to Arlington when I was in high school, and then I went to UTA, University of Texas at Arlington. That's where I got my business degree, and then went to law school in Virginia, Liberty University. Met my wife there. That's a whole nother story. And when we came back, it was the worst economic time for Texas. We're talking about the 2007, 2010 housing market crash.
Yeah.
And so in that period of time for us both trying to find jobs, we just bounced around the state from job to job, trying to string together the experience necessary to continue on. Johnson County was, after I was down in Nueces County as a county attorney, my desire was always to get back up here where my family was. My brother's up here, my sister's up here, their spouses, kids, as well as my parents. And so we wanted to get back up here. She got a job in Fort Worth. We moved back up here. Johnson County had a position open I had applied for, and that's what led me to Johnson County.
Okay. So Talk to me a little bit about your campaign. I know you have been doing things grassroots from the ground up,
That's the best way to describe it.
and we have essentially an establishment in this county that has fought tooth and nail against your campaign, trying to discredit your image of public service, what you've done in this county for years. Talk to me a little bit about how your campaign has been going. Have you been seeing a growth in support for you? Have you been seeing a growth and awareness of what has been going on in the DA's office, the inefficiencies of it? What's been going on?
Absolutely. So I'm still trying to figure the way I like to phrase it or even say it. I've been humbled, surprised, just completely taken aback when I decided to announce to run on December 8th. I did not see the path forward. March 5th is when the votes can be done. We're going to know who's the next district attorney.
Yeah.
The path from December 8th to March 5th, I just did not know how that was going to happen. I just knew that this is something I needed to do. And then the minute I announced and then getting terminated the following Monday, it was just like stepping stones were like popping up, and I just kept meeting new people, new groups, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. It's been phenomenal.
So, who's been the biggest inspiration in your personal life on this campaign? I know it's difficult running for public office. It's difficult to put your name out there and have people learn things about you that might not necessarily be bad things, but they can always kind of harass you and push you back a little bit. Who's been your biggest inspiration on this?
I don't know. I don't know if I have the biggest inspiration, particularly on this. I mean, throughout life, there's always inspirations. I mean, anything for the teachers I've had in high school. I had Mr. Kenyon, which is a teacher I had back in high school. He's very inspirational, just writing, and he also did speech class. I'm trying to think about your question. I think if it came down to kind of the hard nature of the campaign and then the desire for public service, I guess I would go John Adams, the second president. And that's simply because most people don't know anything about John Adams. And I've read his memoir several times, watched the HBO series. I'm sure you have too.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea of a statesman, someone who actually runs for office or serves the country in a way that it really didn't benefit him, because his career, he's a lawyer in Boston. You have the Boston massacre that happens, and he stands up for what is right at the time, but it's not popular, right? And then the whole time throughout his career, he's usually doing something that he doesn't get a lot of credit for.
He got a lot of pushback for defending the British in a court trial because he didn't want the Continental Army's court to take away their rights to a jury in a fair trial. And
exactly, yeah. And then also when he was president, it was the time where that was the least prestigious thing to do. I mean, you just finished with Washington; he's the big national hero, but then taking over all the hard work of being the president without any of the glory. So I guess, I mean, it's a hard question to answer, but that's the person's name that popped to mind for me.
So tell me a little bit about why you decided to run. Why now? I know a lot of people might say, well, he only decided to run because he doesn't like who's in office now, or he doesn't like something about it. But I think a lot of times it's deeper for average citizens than that. We run because something has touched us personally, an issue has affected us personally. Why did you decide to run for district attorney?
Okay. Let's backtrack to, so I've never had the idea or thought that I was probably going to run for office. I remember law school. So on the first day of law school for me, everybody got up in front of their different classes and they would do like a short introduction. This is who I am. This is what I've done. This is my life's ambition. And I remember lots of people saying, well, I'm going to be the next president, or I'm going to be the next wonder senator, or whatever. And I was always just so put off by that. I never particularly like politicians. I've seen most people, I don't know if other people feel this way, but I feel like most politicians are in it for themselves, and they're kind of looking for, I want to get me some glory. So where can I land that achieves that? And so I've never seen that as something I wanted to do. And in this particular job, like, I worked at the office, and then I saw a lot of inefficiencies, which is normal. And I found myself a lot of times going home to my wife and saying, just kind of venting over and over again about things that needed change, and then trying to share those things at the office, saying, we should change this, hearing other people say the same things, and then going, it's just not going to change. And it's not like it's just a business where we sell hamburgers, and it doesn't matter to the greater Johnson County and to Somerville County. It is the only DA's office for those counties. That it's the only thing that can get justice. And so I got in this crossroads of like, well, I'm hoping somebody else steps up and does something. I hope that, this changes. And then internally, the office hasn't changed. No one steps up to run. And then we get closer to this primary election, and the time is counting down to announce. And I already knew back in July before that, my wife and I had a discussion that either we were going to have to step up and try to change something, or we're just going to move on to a different job. And honestly, it was hard because I would much rather have just said, I'm going to go to a different job. That's much easier for me. That's more in my comfort zone to just say, I can go do something else and walk away. This thing takes care of itself. It's not my problem anymore. I'm, doing what's good for me and my family.
Yeah.
But I think what I wrestled with is I live here. My wife lives here. My kids live here. The kids are going to go to school here. Her parents live here. My parents live here. And then I took that family group and realized everybody else's families live here too. And it's selfish just to say, I'm going to walk away from a problem because I've always followed politics, but never want to be part of it. And then when I saw that, I was like, how can I complain about the political system? How can I rant and rave and say this is not working and it's not fair? If on the basic level where I actually have a skill set where I can do something, I just walk away and say, okay, it's going to be what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why I decided to run. It's not this, he's trying to take his shot or this is his moment of glory. I'd really prefer not to be doing this. And if the people of Johnson, Somerville County don't pick me, I'm more than happy with that. I'm more than fine with that. I'm just trying to do what I think is best for the two counties. And if the two counties say no, then I get to move on and do something else. But I feel like that's something I needed to do to give that option. It's, most people know now due to my campaign, Mr. Hanna hasn't had a challenger in 24 years.
Yeah.
And in that period of time, I think it can cause complacency. It can also cause this.
You're settling instead of trying to continue to better your department or your office.
I think so. I mean, I don't think it happens to everybody, but I think it's very, unless you're very intentional and guard against it, I think it can happen. And that's what I saw happen. I feel like the motto always of the DA's office was, but we've always done it this way. And that's a fixed mindset, not a growth mindset. And it doesn't help the people because the world outside the office is growing and changing on a daily basis. So how can the office not grow and change on a daily basis to meet those needs?
So I know technology, for the few candidate forums that I've heard you speak at, technology has been a big issue for the DA's office. The adaptability to bring in new technologies that make communications and information sharing faster between local departments and the DA's office. Would you mind talking a little bit about that? Because it seems like a lot of people are confusing computer literacy with the understanding of efficiency.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a good point. It's also what makes campaigns like this hard.
Yeah.
It's easy to have these big, 1,000-foot view ideas. But to get down kind of in the weeds and talk about, like when I talk about technology, are there computers in the office? Yes, there are. Does Mr. Hanna use a computer? No, he does not. And what that leads to is that when you try to say we need to make something more efficient by using a computer system to do this thing, I just don't think there's that understanding because he hasn't seen the computer as an efficient way to do his business for his entire life.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about computer efficiency, what I'm talking about is that imagine the difference between writing a letter and sending it off versus an email. What the agencies are doing now, and I say agencies in the police departments, is they get a case and they get it finished. They have to print that case off, put it in a binder with 30 other cases, and physically drive down the DA's office and file that case with the DA's office for review. When that goes down that way, it's completely inefficient. One, you have to have 1 to 2 detectives from each agency driving to the DA's office 30 minutes in a car.
Yeah.
It means they're not doing the regular caseload, which is astronomical as it is. And when we need some supplements saying we were missing a report or missing a body cam, which they burn on CDs, you have to come down and do it again and again and again. And so what needs to happen is you need to have a direct filing system where you could have a electronic system where you click submit and then it pops up a DA's office. We can review the file, say either you're missing a document, all the documents are here accepted, but it's all done. So that's the difference between writing the letter, dropping it in the email, 3 days later you get it versus instantaneous. And that's one of the things. It's not like this is a novel idea I've come up with. Like every other DA's office around us does it like that. We are the only DA's office I know of in the Metroplex that still has direct filing by paper.
And from what it sounds like too, even from if I haven't made up my mind or I'm just an average citizen hearing this, to me, that saves not only taxpayer dollars on the gas the departments are paying to get those caseloads, those documents to the DA's office. 60 minutes, an hour is a long time to be in the car.
Right.
That's me driving to Arlington and back almost once in a day. I go to school 45 minutes away, and we're not talking gas is 50 cents anymore. We're saving the taxpayers a lot of money in the course of a week. Do you think that people have justified your idea fairly for this? I know a lot of people have kind of taken it, the insult, putting words in your mouth that you're attacking somebody for not using a computer or not understanding the computers. But to me, it seems like we have a systemic issue with things becoming inefficient, overloaded, and causing more problems for the DA's office.
Mm-hmm. So to answer the first part, I think you're asking about, I'm not pointing out the fact that Mr. Hanna can't use a computer to attack him. I'm trying to show what I think is the cause of why we haven't adopted, right? If I explain to you that Jake doesn't have a car, and that's why, and I explained to him we need to get some kind of transportation system, and you're like, I don't think transport's that important. I'm like, well, Jake doesn't even have a car. He doesn't understand the issue.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to point out, is that it's hard to get someone to understand the issue when they themselves are not participating in the process.
So talk to me a little bit about what you would change first if you were elected district attorney. I know that a lot of other voters have probably had issues aside from the electronics, the adaptation of new versatile means to accomplish goals that are ineffective currently. What have voters told you so far are some big issues that have touched you personally or have kind of added to your platform?
I think there's two big things I'm going to change at the beginning, because some of the stuff I want to change, like technology, is going to require the Commissioner's Court to approve additional funds. So this is maybe a long, drawn-out process to be able to get that accomplished. But the two biggest things I want to do from the get-go don't cost any money. They just require simply changing the mindset of the DA's office. The first thing has to do with law enforcement. I've been saying my entire campaign, and this is one of the reasons I decided to run, is that I've worked with all these officers, and I've seen the disrespect they have from the DA's office. They feel that their cases are not being respected. I've seen the cases getting rejected. I mean, good cases. And that's the thing people need to understand. These are not the DA's office. I clearly will tell you, cannot take every case filed. It's just, it's not feasible. But we're talking about cases with recorded confessions or the crime being on video and they just get rejected, and you have demoralized officers going, I spent 60 hours working this case up, putting a bow on it and submitting it, and it just gets rejected. Not to mention there's always a victim behind that who's sitting there going, what about my case? What happened? I'm sorry. The DA's office rejected it. And you can't go anywhere else. It's not like you have, like we used the burger joint example before. You can't go to another vendor, another provider. You've only got one place you can go, which is the DA's office.
Yeah.
So it would be repairing that relationship with all of the different agencies. And that's just simply changing the idea of respecting the officers and actually going to meet with them. Is the elected district attorney, if I get that position, I'm going to be going to the different departments, meeting with the chiefs of police, the lieutenants, the captains, the sergeants, going to roll call as much as they would like me to go. Because I don't think we can work together as a team if we are always separated. I can't tell you how many people probably have never met Mr. Hanna that work at the police departments because there's that separation. I don't want to see that. I want to see us working together as a team. And so that'd be one thing I would do. The other thing I would like to change immediately is just the approach to the outside of being transparent. I think the biggest complaint I've seen is people talking about, I feel like the DA's office is inaccessible. So part of that is having a victim assistance coordinator, but just being open and honest with people. One of the things I've been talking to people about, like particularly like Greg Cooper, is probably anybody on that shows on here saying, I think your elected district attorney should be able to be called out and say, we would like you to come on my show for a certain time. to talk about some issues. I know we can't talk about specific cases,
Yeah.
but just say, hey, there's a big this issues arise that either you're being lax on something or too hard on something. This is where the public outcry is. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more accessibility and transparency. But the other thing is simply it's the good old boy system of people get different results is the other part of that. And so being transparent, I think everybody needs to get the same result. I think it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, if you're the mayor of a city or you're the guy that sleeps under the bridge, it doesn't matter who you are. It matters about the facts of the case.
Yeah.
And so I've personally seen it while I've worked there that there's always these weird outlying cases. You go, why is this being treated so much differently than the other cases? Then you always find out there's some kind of factor that has to do with the person and who they know versus the facts of the case. So it's either the defense attorney they hire, or it's they have a family member that has a connection, or whatever it is. That's just going to flat stop.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of pushback by the establishment because I've been talking about that. And it's like, yeah, I can tell that challenges and threatens the good old boy system because that's how things run. I need favors from my friends. I need my back scratched. I want to know that if I ever get in a corner, you're going to be there to help me out. And that's just not how it's going to be.
And I think you made a really good point earlier. This isn't just about, one person's family. This isn't about one citizen or who's in office. It's about ensuring that you're serving the community in a way that justifies and empowers the citizens to want to work with the DA's office, to want to build those relationships, those connections, so that everything can run smooth. And the DA's office is not this kind of shadow organization that is just running behind the scenes. During your campaign, I've seen a lot of people say that you are inexperienced, which, on this show, anybody that's watched this knows much, much better than Mr. Good here, that I have nothing wrong with experience, but I have a problem with people making that the forefront of somebody's campaign. Just because somebody has 30 or 40 or 50 years of government experience does not mean that they are the best fit for the job, does not mean that they put their duty, their service, their obligation to the citizens over what they can get out of it or their own image. So talk to me a little bit about your experience. You said you have worked for the DA's office too, matter of fact.
Right.
What is your experience and why should the citizens trust in it?
Okay. I think it's a fair question. So I've been a prosecutor for over a decade. I've tried cases, anything from murder down to drug cases. I've been in front of juries pretty much all the time. Right. And so I have experience. And then on top of all that experience, I'm board certified. Mr. Henn is too. But that further shows that's how much closer our experience gaps are, is that there's only 785 attorneys in the state of Texas out of that 110,000 that are board certified in criminal law. He and I are in that very small, less than 1% subset. So the only way he can distinguish is now start saying is years. It's not about, he can't say he's never tried felony jury cases. He can't say I haven't tried murder cases. He can't say I'm not board certified. So it has to break down to, we got to separate by years.
Yeah.
And I mean, do I have as many years of service as he has? No. But can I do the job? Absolutely. I did the job as the assistant for 7 years at the DA's office. And I think that's a big advantage for me. Most times when you have a challenger to the district attorney, it is either a defense attorney who has never done prosecution in their life, or they did prosecution back 5 years, beginning their career, and they've been out on their own for 20 years. But they don't know how that particular office operates, right? So you have to kind of get into office, figure out who are the good apples, who are the bad apples, what system works, what doesn't. Being in there, I know exactly what systems work and also what systems are just horribly misaligned and do not work. I know who in the office is good and needs to stay and who doesn't. And so it's a very weird and great situation for the voters, is that it's easy to replace the current district attorney with someone who can step in there from day one and know, I know how this whole thing works. I was just right here.
Yeah.
I've watched it from the inside for 7 years.
And I think it's very funny. Politics has become the complete opposite of what Americans have recognized as the standard. When people go out and let's say they want to buy a new house, they want to buy something that is going to last. Are they going to go out and buy the 70-year-old house, or are they going to move here and design, build, or have a new house? If you're looking for a great car, are you going to get the one that's from 1957 to be your daily driver? Or are you going to get the one that's moderately new? to kind of get you where you need to go.
Mhm.
And so I think the one thing that people need to look at when they look at Tim Good's campaign is not the age difference. In this country, we put a priority on discriminating against everything. Who's red, who's blue, who's old, who's young. When we as Americans should be looking at the service record of our politicians, the willingness to put in their personal time, their resources, their energy to do a job that nobody else wants to do. Maybe not a job that even they themselves want to do, which is something even more admirable than somebody saying, I'm just going for another term, and I don't think I've even heard a platform from a lot of people that are running for office around the county. It's just kind of, we have a good office. Let's keep doing the same things.
Mhm.
So join us back here in a minute and a half. We'll be on with the second segment. Put your questions in there as well. If you have any questions for Mr. Good, God bless you. Stick with us. We're looking forward to seeing you again.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back, Johnson County. I'm going to let the Benny Goodman Orchestra finish up there. So once again, if you have any questions for the second segment, go ahead and put them in the chat. This is an open forum. You're more than welcome. You're more than able to. We don't censor. We don't get rid of free speech here. While everybody is typing in their questions, we'd like to say Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all of the ways to listen and watch. The station app, which I highly recommend, is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at JocoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more are brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your local Texas sales rep at 844-839-4245. That's 844-839-4245. Be sure to dress your arms and more at the Tiffy.com. We ended off on the dispute about age difference. Does age really make a difference in the willingness of somebody to give up their time, their energy, to commit to serving the American people, in this case, the people of Johnson and Somerville counties? Experience has been something that has been tossed around both in congressional and local, as well as the DA's race. And I've heard too many times both of the candidates get up there. Now, Tim has made much more sense to me than his opponent. And that's not just me as a young person saying that, but we have an issue with politicians not wanting to build up their successors, people that will follow them. I've heard Mr. Hanna come out and say, and I want everybody to know, I don't have anything against Dale Hanna. I think he has a lot of experience. He has a lot of years in an office. But when we have candidates walking around saying, that's why you train them up, that's why you build up leadership. I've heard he himself say this numerous times on the campaign trail. But yet when people ask him, what are you doing to put up a successor? He says, well, we've just been instilling them and building up new leaders. The question somebody asks is the exact same answer they got back, which is paradoxical. So we have a young man from probably what I'd even beg to say 2 generations, maybe a generation and a half younger than Mr. Hanna, who is willing to carry the torch from the past generation. I've not heard any personal attacks. I've not heard anything against who our DA is, but when people get to be a certain age, there is a point at which we have to start thinking about the future of our community before it gets too late and there's nobody that wants to run because all it seems to be is an establishment.
Right.
So one thing that I'm going to have Tim Good comment on here, I'm going to show his website here. It's goodforda.com. Now, this is under Why Change is Good, under that tab there. So it says current DA Dale Hanna has held public office for 41 years, has run as a Democrat 4 times, originally ran on term limits. The county population has doubled since his first term in 1992. From 1992 to the present, has not used a computer or email in the office, is now seeking a 9th term and would be 81 years old at the end of his next term. So Mr. Good has put a quote on here that I invariably agree with. Voters need to ask themselves why politicians insist on retaining political office well beyond the average American's age of retirement. Joe Biden, Barbara Boxer, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell. A true conservative will prioritize preserving conservatism, which involves being willing to pass the torch to the next generation of conservative leaders over preserving their own position and power. So, talk to me a little bit about that statement. I know this is we've seen this from the federal level down from the president. We've seen it in local races. We saw it in becoming a big theme.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about what you see the issue with in the future. Like, are we doing a good enough job at bringing in younger generations to represent their community?
Well, I think the answer is obvious. Of course not. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges the Republican Party is facing, particularly the conservative wing of the Republican Party, is we're not growing.
Yeah.
We're dying out, and it's one we're losing. I mean, we could get a whole separate podcast or a show on this about how the universities are turning everybody liberal.
Yeah.
People are not really being instilled with conservative values before they go to university. And so it takes a long time of world experience before they come back around and say, wait a minute, all the stuff I learned before about this and that in college is not meeting reality, right? So we have to be intentional with, getting people, reaching out to younger generations and, for lack of a better term, recruiting them to our cause by explaining. I think the conservative movement is a very fact-based situation. It's not about feelings. It's not about what feels good at the time. The conservative movement actually really is, if you really boil it down, is based on the next generation, in the sense that, think of the founding fathers. They did not declare independence from England for themselves. They didn't make their situation instantly better. People did not die in the Revolutionary War to make their lives better at the time, right? It's always about the next generation. If the conservative movement is working, it is always about, it's about my kids and your kids, and then for them is their kids. It's always pushing forward. People always think of conservatism as being this backward facing, oh, you just want the good old times back in the day. And no, it's always about building on that next generation for freedom. It's creating a more perfect union, a more perfect freedom going forward. But to answer your question about, these individuals, I wish I had an answer. That's kind of one of the things that I think we all across America have struggled with is, and each, I think, person, whether it's Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell, why are they still in office? Besides the fact they keep getting voted in. Voted in is a whole other issue about voter, being engaged, I think.
Yeah.
But for them, why they staying in well past when they seem to be effective, I don't know. I think each one of them has a separate reason. They may not even consciously know why they're doing it. But the question for us as voters is, are those people who are still staying in, they're clinging on to that office
Yeah.
so hard? Is it good for them to stay, or is that why they're staying, or is it good for us? Are they still serving us? I mean, I'm not trying to say that anybody's supposed to be in office for a period of time they're supposed to leave. If you have a plumber that does a great job for 25 years, you don't change them out simply because you go, well, I've had the same plumber for 25 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to get rid of him. That's stupid. No one lives like that. I don't think you should do the same thing to your politicians. But when you start seeing problems, like it's like if you had a plumber that did not keep up with new advances in plumbing technology and started being more self-centered about themselves, and you start having less service from them, but they keep going, yeah, you should keep me. And their biggest sales pitch to you is, I've been your plumber for 25 years. You don't want to risk it and try it with somebody else. I think you got to start asking the question, do I really have the best service, right?
Yeah.
It's not about time. It's about when time makes you complacent, when you've decided that. Also differently from having like a customer, you don't own a customer. A public office is not yours. And so when you're in a public office, you serve the people. And so
Amen.
when you switch to start thinking that this is my office, and I think that's a lot what we talked about, those Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, they can't see themselves as anything but what they are, the senator or whatever name title that goes with it.
It's an entitlement at that point. They feel like they are supposed to be in that office, that they should be reelected.
I think it could be that, or it could just be so much that their identity is merged with that office that they cannot allow it to be separated. But I'm sure there's a bunch of other reasons. But I think as the voters, like everybody talks about term limits. I'm not talking about term limits. I'm talking about you need to look at each individual office and say, is this person meeting my needs as a voter? If yes, keep them in office. But as the larger public, I wish people were more engaged. We would not need to talk about term limits if all the voters were engaged. If everybody's engaged and informed, then you could have someone staying for 75 years if they do a great job. So I don't think it's about how long you've been in. It's about how you're currently performing. March 5th is the job interview, right? This is the world's longest job interview, the primaries. And you have to decide, do you rehire the same person for the job next year, or do you hire a different candidate?
And I think that's a very good point that you've raised, that especially in my generation, what we are supposed to have is the next generation of the conservative movement. People want term limits, but they don't want to hold themselves accountable to oversee what's going on in that office. And I don't know whether it's they refuse to, or it's just the complacency. They feel like things don't change. There's no chance at changing things. This guy's been in there so long. What's the use in voting for somebody else? It's been this way forever. One vote doesn't make a difference. Which we looked at Bush Gore. That was a big thing. People actually, it was a very, very slim margin of the election. It came down to one state in Florida, and it went on for a month after the election, counting the ballots, looking into who was going to be president.
Yeah.
And we have a chance in this county, in Johnson and Somerville County, at truly making change. And I do like your quote, change is good. Both because it's a decent thing and it's your last name.
Right.
I think people in our county deserve to have a chance at a choice this time. Going 30 years, 20 years is too long without giving the American people a choice. Talk to me a little bit about your honest opinion about the political climate in the country today. Do you think that there are a lot of people like you that might be scared of running for office, that might want somebody else to do it? They don't know where they're at. They want change, but they just don't know where to go for it.
I think absolutely. I think everybody wants, something. I think we can all, let's start with the basic premise to see if we can all agree on. I think we all agree that the country is not going in the direction that we feel is in the best interest of ourselves, our children, and their children, and so on.
Yeah.
So that means there needs to be some form of change. And so then the question is, who's going to do that? And I think it's natural. And particularly, I think one of the things is the conservative Republicans we get kind of sidetracked on because, like C.S. Lewis said, the family is children are not a distraction from work. They are your most important work.
Yeah.
So we are raising families. And so while we're doing that, the country is changing around us. And so it's amazing to see people that I've met on the campaign trail that have been running for school board or other things that have small young children.
Yeah.
And they're doing that because they were dividing their time. And I think that's, one of the big challenges. But that's the other thing is I think you get caught up in going, I don't have the time to do this. I can't do this. And part of that is true. Like you have to prioritize and change your priorities and give up certain things to make time to do it. But then there's that fear because like my thing is, I don't want to be a politician. Like that's not who I am. Like that's just not, I don't see that as my identity. And so I think a lot of people struggle with when they hear the idea of running for something. I think to me, the most admirable thing I've seen people step up and do is not DA's races or Congress or things like that. It's school board elections.
Yeah.
It's city council stuff. Like local is the most important. That's the thing that's going to change your community like nothing else. And so when people step up and to do that, that to me, I think is a bigger, I have admiration for that. That should be a bigger hand clap. That should be whatever than people who run for higher office because you're not going to get in the glory running for school board. You're not going to get, but you're going to get all the pain and heartache and everything else that you get with campaigning across the board.
Yeah.
But so you're going to do all of the work, but get down the glory. No one's going to sit around and go, that's so-and-so. They're powerful. Right. But in reality, you're going to make more change on the school board than you are, probably running for Congress.
And you make a very good point about that. A lot of people want to blame our president. They want to blame Congress for the illegal immigration situation. But look at all of the mayors, the city councils that have consciously voted to have sanctuary city statuses to allow these migrants to come in and invade their city. We have a chance at county and the local level at making a real difference in our community. And you mentioned the children. This is another thing that I've heard you speak of that I kind of want the community to hear again, if they haven't had the chance to. First question: does the Johnson and Somerville County DA's office work or correlate or have a human trafficking office or task force?
No, we don't.
So you have ran on wanting to implement or at least setting the ground for working with local departments to set up a human trafficking task force. I believe, I could be wrong, I could stand corrected, but there's about 22,000 people in this state alone that are human trafficked each week. Most of them, 1% of them come across the southern border. 99% are from people that the child knows in the community. So talk to me a little bit about how you would set that up. I know that being in the job and encountering the difficulties of setting it up is different than asking you right now, but what would you ensure the first step would be to setting up a human trafficking task force?
Okay, let's kind of start with the inception where the idea came from. So we have the Johnson County Narcotics Task Force, which is STOP.
Yeah.
And so that is the acknowledgement. And there's tons of task force all across the country and local and federal. And that's the acknowledgement that certain types of crimes are more complex, need specialized skill and specialized training. So we have something to address narcotics in Johnson County STOP. We've had them since, I think, 1988 or something like that. But as we've gone on in time and we've seen other felonies grow, particularly sexual abuse of children, child pornography, online solicitation of minors, human trafficking, that it just mushroomed, particularly with the advent of the internet 2000, we're just going more and more. It's out of control. And then working the job, I realized that each individual agency is left up to trying to battle this on their own. And so you get one detective that gets overwhelmed, or maybe a detective gets put in the slot. And that was never what they wanted to do, but that's the slot that they get stuck in. What you need is you need to have people who are that's one of those types of crimes that you have to be passionate about. It has to be almost a calling. I'd say it has to be a calling for you to do that. So to have a task force, have individuals within Johnson County who have that calling to do those types of crimes, to investigate them. And then on top of that, to bring those people together in a unit where we can get more funding, more training, specialized on that, that would be huge in combating. I don't understand why we have the Johnson County Children Advocacy Center, which is, it's a ginormous, great building. They have therapy there. It's designed to help all these kids in Johnson County. Almost every county now has one that have been victims of sexual abuse and trauma. That's helping them move past the injury that's happened to them. But in Johnson County, we don't have a dedicated group of men and women in law enforcement that is there to hold the person accountable who caused that trauma in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's the big driving factor. I've seen that need. Working the cases that we need to have a unit to address those types of issues. And we're just not doing that because we're overly focused on narcotics. Narcotics stops still going to exist, still go forward, still be funded, still, probably grow in size as it should. But you can't just focus on one thing when you see this festering problem on the side, which is the sexual abuse of children, and say,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do about that. You have to be proactive. And I think the most proactive way is to say, we're going to start targeting pedophiles and predators the same we are drug dealers.
And this, Mr. Good mentions the growing problem, especially after the internet came about.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered that. I believe that was the first or second episode we've done on this show. Child trafficking, child pornography totalizes at $150 billion a year globally. That is the scope of the business. To say that that's not going on in our own county is just, it's turning a blind eye. There's no accountability in that. There's no standing up for what is right morally with that. We have 22,000 kids a week go missing. Most of them are recovered, but those that aren't, we have a chance at improving enforcement, improving accountability in the DA's office. And I had asked Mr. Hanna that exact question here about a month back. I'd asked him, what are we doing to combat human, specifically child and female sex trafficking in the district, in the DA's office? And he had said, it's not, and I'm not saying verbatim, so don't take this to heart if you're listening or watching, but he said, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it pales in comparison. If you don't remember anything that I've said today, take this with you, that our biggest issue in the DA's office is drugs. What do you think could be improved, first of all, with the building up of situational awareness within the community for these growing issues that people might not know that the DA's office isn't working on?
Well, that's a good question. How to make people aware of what they're not working on. Part of that is the campaign, right? And trying to bring light to that. If I'm elected, hopefully that doesn't become an issue. We need to keep talking about that.
Yeah.
I've been to several nonprofit groups, got a chance to speak at different locations. And I love how outside of the DA's office, the community is trying to address it.
Yeah.
I really think your elected district attorney should be part of that conversation, should be out there and saying, it is a problem. This is what's happening. To get the pulse of the community and saying, hey, everybody else is concerned about this.
Yeah.
Why aren't your elected officials concerned about it? I think that's a big deal. The other thing I think is that when you listen to politicians talk about narcotics and drugs, it's always this idea, this external force outside of whatever their, realm of responsibility is invading and repelling it. It's evading and repelling it. And so I think that's why narcotics is so powerful for politicians, is because I'm not talking about people in my area. I'm talking about this evil outside forces coming in. The problem, people don't want to talk about human trafficking and talk about sexual abuse of children because it's happening inside the community, right? Everybody likes to think of human trafficking happening, somebody's trafficking kids through our community driving down I-35. But like you mentioned, the majority of kids being trafficked, or they know the person, they're related to the person that's trafficking them, and they're actually staying in their, the homes are in the same locations. Like it's happening here within Johnson County. So that's, as a politician, that is not popular to talk about, because you're no longer talking about this, I'm standing against this external force invading our community. Now there's a rot within the community that needs to be removed like a cancer.
Yeah.
But but that's not fun to talk about.
I had a question, completely blew my mind.
No, that's fine.
So we're living in a very difficult time. I don't feel like there are enough people addressing these issues, that there are enough people willing to jeopardize their own lifestyle, their own credibility to go out and campaign on wanting to better things that haven't been addressed in our public government.
Okay.
And I think that is something that I have respected you from day one for, is somebody who is willing to stand up to the establishment, somebody who is willing to confront, not necessarily turn a blind eye to the issues that have been going on for 30 years, but addressing new ones. Um, we've addressed this numerous times in the program that politics is not a consensus. It is an evolving, it is an interwoven network of issues of uh, uh, corroboration, of working together, how certain issues have evolved. What have you noticed living in the county has been what you think is a driving force behind the change that we've seen? Is it kind of the schools aren't teaching the kids to be aware of certain things? Is it the parents have become lax? Is it um, just that our public officials, like you mentioned, the DA's office hasn't addressed this growing threat to the community? Where do you think we kind of have to draw the line?
I think it's all those areas, right? It's, not trying to put blame on any, one individual or entity, because that's like that's not gonna be productive for the issue. Because I want people to step up and say, it's not about taking blame, it's trying to change.
Yeah.
But I mean, it begins, I think, with with any issue. It begins in the home. As a parent, like, I have the unique advantage of that I know all the stuff out there that's happening. So as a parent, I'm hyper vigilant, and I have plans going forward of how I'm going to try to be hyper vigilant with my kids, whether it be the ability to access the internet, cell phones, stuff like that. So I think parents need to be more educated on that. It's kind of a weird thing. We have done a weird social experiment with our children, which is that we went from having televisions in the home, which are pretty, innocuous and kind of limited, to we now have kids who have cell phones. They can access any kind of information, any kind of content in the world, just in their pockets, right? And there's a lot of benefits to technology, but there's also a lot of dangers, and we haven't put those bumper rails or guards on for our kids a lot of times. And so a lot of parents are just uninformed about what's going on out there. I've seen online cases, solicitation of minors. When I say solicitation, they're trying to get child pornography from the kids. Kids produce pornography for them, meet up for sex, whatever it is, in the most innocent of places. I've seen it on Roblox, which is a game.
Yeah.
There are the Discord servers where you basically they're a base for playing games online, and in there are chat rooms and stuff you can fall into that has pedophiles. I mean, even just basic Xbox Live, there are times where people will have communication on there, talk to a kid, get a phone number or some kind of chat address, and then they move it off that to another platform, until they get them to a point where they can actually exchange photographs or to meet up. So as a parent, I think if you don't know that and you're not educated on that, you just think, oh, this is just this innocent thing my kid's doing. You got to kind of think of it this way. When you're downstairs washing the dishes and your kids are upstairs, if you knew somebody had crawled in the bedroom window, was sitting on the bed next to them, just talking to them, you would be up there with the shotgun.
Yeah.
But that's what's happening. I mean, almost every day when your kids go upstairs with their devices, anybody can crawl through that virtual window and sit down and talk to them. So there's a lot of information. You get online, start Google how do I monitor my kids' social media? How do I monitor their internet usage? There's a lot of ways to track that. I've seen people who have mirrored phones on their phones. They can see every chat their child does. And some people say that's, that's too much. That's helicopter parenting. But in today's society, I think there's some justification for. I have never talked to a parent whose kid wasn't solicited or, met up to and got sexually abused, said, well, I definitely did everything I should have. They all feel regret. I'm not saying it's their fault. What I'm saying is they all can all say, I had no idea.
Could have done more to prevent it.
But they didn't know. They never thought of it. It doesn't cross your mind. And it just was one of those other things. Like, there's so many places we got to protect your kids on. It's just one of those extra things that we sometimes just don't have the mental bandwidth to say, I need to tackle this issue. I would love to see law enforcement, DA's office, whoever else, the nonprofit groups, more engaging parents, and starting from that standpoint, because parents are the starting point for almost any social issue you want to talk about.
Yeah.
I think going from there, talking to kids at school, because sometimes they won't listen to their parents, but talking to them about, meeting up, all these different apps, there's a lot of dangers behind that. And so I think all those different apps are a place to start and talk.
So in the last 20 seconds, would you like to discuss any events that you're going to be going to pretty soon, or anything that you want to say to the listeners?
Yeah. So for the Burleson listeners, so we're or if you're even close to Burleson, so Old Town Texas Brewery, we're having a meet and greet on Monday, February 5th, starts at 6 p.m. I would love just to meet anybody who wants to come out. The whole point of those is to be able to shake your hand and talk to you. I love talking to people because I get to know what the issues are. So if anybody wants to come out to that, that'd be fantastic. You can go to my website, Good for DA. There's a Facebook link on there. You can find the event. I hope to see everybody there.